Claire Prager from the Cheesecake Factory, all the way from Los Angeles. Woo! So tell us a little bit about Cheesecake Factory, a little bit of history and your involvement there. And I know you've been there for 13 years, I believe.
So most of you probably heard of the Cheesecake Factory. Hopefully you've all eaten there. We're a very large company now. We've been around a little over 33 years. We have 173 restaurants. The majority of those are our namesake brand, the Cheesecake Factory restaurants. We have 158. We also have the Grand Lux Cafe. There's one downstairs if you haven't ever eaten. It's very similar to a Cheesecake Factory, a little more upscale. And then we have an Asian restaurant. We have one of those in LA, and it's a Rock Sugar Pan Asian Kitchen. If you ever get out to LA, the most fantastic food, the most beautiful restaurant. So we're a $1.8 billion restaurant company, and it's been amazing. Yeah, I've been recruiting or head of recruiting for a little over 11 years.
Wow. Now, I looked at your bio, and we talked about this. So the name of the company you worked at before Cheesecake Factory was?
The Bubba Gump Shrimp Company.
And I thought that was made up. So, okay, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the project that we've been involved in. I remember we worked together for, golly, it seemed like forever. And we had some great conversations about the goals and everything. So prior to kicking this off, talk to us about some of the catalysts for getting this going, because Cheesecake was already like one of the best in class anyway, right? So they're one of the top companies in their field in terms of reputation and quality. So what was the catalyst that kicked this off to move forward with a new project?
Good question, Simon. Well, I realized that we had an opportunity at the hourly level to give back some time to our managers. We've always used assessments. So assessments were not new to us, been around since before I started with Cheesecake Factory. The assessment that we had in place before I implemented PeopleAnswers was a structured interview. It took about 20 minutes per candidate.
Wow.
So you can imagine in a restaurant, the amount of time that took for the restaurant managers. And I was also a little concerned with the validity of the assessment that was in place at the time, because there was some subjectivity on the manager's part in scoring that interview. So I wanted to give time back from the HR perspective, wanted to make sure that it was valid. I also wanted to be able to track it and have good data, because pencil and paper tests and so on, we couldn't track those. So wanted to go online, give the managers time back, and be able to track the data. So we did an RFP. And as you said, months of negotiations, and then we signed in November.
So during that period, as you were building the RFP, was there a time where you actually had to go internally and say, okay, Mr. Stakeholder, if we do this, this is what I think the benefits are going to be, and then quantify that so that the audience can think about how they, again, this whole monetization thing. What was the process you went through to actually think through, it's going to cost us this, but we're going to get this back?
Well, absolutely. What were the benefits? We wanted to give time back to the managers, and we actually wanted to try to save money. We had a costly assessment in place, and we couldn't determine the ROI of that costly assessment. So there was lots. If I give time back to the managers, that's going to improve guest service. If I get better quality hire, of course, that's going to improve guest service. If I happen to lower attrition, great. That's an added benefit. But we were winning awards for some of the lowest attrition in the industry. So that really was the bottom of my list.
Interesting.
But it was really the data. We're a very data-driven company, and the efficiencies.
Okay. Okay, so I know, again, from living through this, that we took quite a while to get through all of the legal stuff and contracts, and then all of a sudden it was kind of, okay, we're ready, let's go. So talk to us about the initial couple of months of working together.
We signed the Monday after Thanksgiving, and my COO and the SVP of new restaurant openings said, great, you've got an online tool. Can we use that in 6 weeks? Well, we got to create profiles. No, really, we want to give managers back time. They're like, we'll worry about the profiles later. So I called Zach and said, can we use not only an off-the-shelf assessment, but can we also use your ATS? Can we do this in 6 weeks? And Zach said, yes, and we did. It was New Year's Day, Memorial City in Houston. We did our first hire a new restaurant opening using both PeopleAnswers and assessment and ATS, and we staffed in 10 days. It usually takes us 6 weeks. We staffed 250 staff members in 10 days. And so everyone was just, wow, yeah, of course you gave the managers back time. And then it was like, let's look at the quality. So once we opened that restaurant, though, the feedback came back not great quality at all. So great, you gave the manager back time, but you didn't really improve the quality. Well, I said, well, that's because we used off-the-shelf assessments. We still have to build the profile. So then it took us about 6 months or so to build the profile, assess our incumbent staff, and then the first new restaurant opening that we did with the profiles, it was amazing. I got a phone call from our COO saying, this is the best staff I've ever seen. And every opening since then, he calls me and says that. It's amazing. The quality of hire just keeps improving.
If we look now at the study that we employed, right? So these are just some of the metrics that we used when we're actually building the actual study itself. And again, we just referred to that, the ability to go out and grab this data, normalize this data. What's good in one area might not be the same metrics as another, and then pull that information together and make it usable and meaningful. So this is a study that we put together, and again, some of the initial results here were just mind-blowing. So tell us a little bit about how you communicated those internally, just in terms of the overall metrics and any problems that you had in getting metrics. And particularly, I was fascinated by the tip rate, which we talked about, which is like, I've never heard anybody use that as one of the metrics for measuring success. Give us a little bit of insight into that.
Well, as most companies, data-driven, right? And so we quickly wanted to take a look at the ROI. And I thought collecting the data was going to be a lot harder than it was. So just have to say right there, super easy. All I did was get a report from our HRIS of our termed staff and send it over to Zach and the team, and they did the rest. So those were the staff, the 16,000 staff members. They just churned the data and came back and were able to tell us with that data from the people that termed. And what key was to differentiate between voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary terms leave because they're going back to school, their schedule changes, so there's not as much value looking at voluntary. Involuntary, however, are the people that are just not a right fit, and you need to term them. So it's either job performance or culture fit. So we really, when the data came back, and it was a huge aha, that wow, 31% reduction overall, and then the 42% reduction in involuntary terms. So we're meeting with the COO and the SVP of HR, and Zach's presenting the information, and my COO says, well, let's see if we can tie this to engagement scores. What other performance metrics do we have? And so he was the one that suggested, let's look at our tip percentage. That's part of our scorecard for our servers. And so we sent over the data again to Zach and team, and they came back, and there was the 2% increase in those that were recommended on their tip percentage. So of course, the guests are saying good service from those staff.
Okay, so if we look at those results in terms of monetizing them, this is an attempt we have at taking the actual dollarizing those figures. So how do you communicate that back to those people who sponsored this and say, told you so?
Well, we have our General Managers Conference coming up, and that's one of the reasons I was motivated to get this study done very quickly over the summer, with just having implemented just less than a year ago. Our GM conference is next week in Las Vegas, and to continue to what we call close the gaps on adoption, because there's always those people out there that say, I don't need to trust the tool doesn't work. There's always those GMs out there that I'll hire the recommended with reservations. And so this just speaks volumes to our GMs, because it's the bottom line right there. And then all the way to the board, it's just easy to show the numbers that it's working, and in 6 months the
wow.
savings.
So if you look at this, I know one of the key things that was important for you was just training and sustainability of what you do. Talk a little bit about kind of some of the innovations and some of the training that you did to push this out to the field, to make sure you keep them using it and keep their eyes on it.
We decided to take a different approach with our training when rolling this out, and we decided to use our brand new LMS, our learning management system. When you pay a lot of money, they want to use it right away. So we decided, really in hindsight, wasn't the best, but we decided to do 100% e-learning to train both the ATS and the assessment and interpreting the assessment. So, initial implementation, wow, it seemed like it rolled out well, but then when we took a look at the numbers during the turnover study, there were definitely some restaurants that were hiring people that were not in PeopleAnswers. Were they using paper? What were they doing? So that's why we're trying to close the gaps and help with the adoption and the training. So we continue to train, and next week we're again at our GM conference, and we don't typically do this at our conference. It's a leadership development conference, but we're doing hands-on training with both the ATS and interpreting the assessment.
So interesting journey, good process that you went through. What's the next step? What's the next big thing for you as you roll this out and continue to try and move the needle for Cheesecake Factory?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next steps look like?
We are going to continue to look at the profiles, and one of the first things we're going to do is our host profile, and make sure that we're going to do a validation study on the host profile and make sure that all the core competencies are as we expect them to be. So we'll do that in Q1. And we're growing. We're opening a lot of restaurants. We just opened in Dubai. And we'll continue to grow both in Canada, Puerto Rico, and across the globe. So we need to just make sure the tool we have in place is validated, and the languages as well, which you offer multiple languages, will really help as we grow.
Sure. So any advice to people who are just embarking on this journey? What would your takeaways be? You look back on this now after 2 years. So any kind of learnings or any advice to people that are like, oh my, we've got to start doing this? What would your advice be?
PeopleAnswers does so much for you. I've implemented applicant tracking systems, a couple of them, and I've used assessments, like I said, or selected assessment vendors. And at the end of the day, PeopleAnswers really just makes it so much easier. It's a relationship with everybody on the team. You just an amazing team. They support you. I'm a huge PeopleAnswers. I'm like, could be a commercial for you guys. You're just
I think you are
amazing. Yeah.
We're getting this.
So it's I think when you're selecting a vendor, we're a huge company. Like I said, $1.8 billion, but we're a founder-run company. So David Overton, our founder, I still feel like we're that very small company, and to have a partner like PeopleAnswers, where you can talk to Gab, the CEO and founder, it's that connection right there. And then of course, the unintended consequences of a tool that works really well.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, a round of applause for Claire from Cheesecake Factory. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.